police officer found a baby crying in a dumpster and rescued her. Years later, he had a surprise. He found her covered in tears, huddled inside a trash bin, and was in shock and panic. Years later, life once again brought him a delightful surprise on a peaceful evening in a quiet rural town. Marcos diligently performed his patrolling duties, showing his dedication as a police officer. The city displayed a quiet atmosphere, as if it were in deep slumber, creating a serene ambience that enabled the man to appreciate the picturesque landscapes of the charming town. He gazed at the city lights, seeing them as celestial stars, and observed the houses, each with its own captivating tales. As he pondered, his mind started to delve into more deep ideas. Marcos pondered the experience of having a family to share his days, both the ups and downs, moments of happiness, moments of fear, a loving family waiting for him after a long and exhausting day. At 39 years old, his life as a police officer was filled with solitude. Due to the constant danger he faced, he had made the decision not to get married or have children. This was because he had experienced the tragic loss of his father, who was also a police officer in a shooting when he was young. It was really tough for him and his mother to go through the challenges of his father's absence. His mother was deeply affected and never fully bounced back from it. When he chose to match his idol, he also made the choice to avoid the pain of missing a spouse or children in case something went wrong. Nevertheless, he constantly experienced a sense of lacking without a companion to share his stories, emotions, and thoughts with. Marcos was a humble and diligent individual who was raised in a modest family within the same city. His dad was a cop, and his mom worked as a seamstress. From a young age, after the loss of his beloved father, the boy developed a strong desire to positively impact people's lives and prevent them from experiencing the pain of crime. Having started working for the police force right after he turned 18, and he was deeply dedicated to his job ever since, Marcos stood out amongst the police officers in the city for his genuine concern for the people he served and protected. He prioritized connecting with the community by engaging with locals and participating in various local activities, such as volunteering at shelters and church events. His co-workers regarded him as a courageous and resolute police officer, always ready to confront challenging and perilous circumstances in order to safeguard his community. Once, Marco was tasked with investigating a potential sale of illegal products in a distant and risky neighborhood. Upon arrival, he discovered the presence of the criminals who were still present and armed. Instead of waiting for additional support, he, who was just 25 years old at the time, chose to handle the situation on his own. He cautiously approached the traffickers and attempted to persuade them to surrender without violence. Nevertheless, the perpetrators refused to give up and began firing. In the back alley, Marcos reminisced about his father and his battles against similar individuals. Marcos fearlessly confronted the criminals without hesitation. In the midst of all the commotion, he somehow managed to stop one of the suspects, while the rest ran away. However, thanks to the bravery and unwavering resolve of the young man, the authorities were able to successfully apprehend the remaining individuals at a later time. Outside of work, the policeman was an unassuming and down-to-earth individual. He didn't think of himself as a hero, even though he did some impressive things on the battlefield. He enjoyed spending his leisure time immersed in detective novels, action films, and the challenge of solving mysteries. He had a strong desire to become a detective in the future, so he was getting ready for it. He continued to work diligently day after day, unaware that fate had a major surprise in store for him. During a calm evening, Marcos was patrolling the city when he unexpectedly encountered a situation beyond his wildest imagination. The night was pitch black, and the breeze was starting to turn chilly. He parked a car in a spot near a park to take a break and read his book. He had about 20 minutes until his next round. Therefore, He made the choice to exit the vehicle momentarily and give his legs a good stretch. As he strolled through the streets, he observed the wind rustling the tree leaves and felt a slight chill. Winter is beginning, he pondered. As he continued his stroll, lost in contemplation, an unfamiliar noise reached his ears. What's making that sound? He wondered, intrigued and alert. It appeared to originate from a dim location near the trash cans in the park. With caution and his weapon at the ready, he made the choice to investigate. As he approached the garbage cans, the sound became less and less believable. "I'm sorry, but this is not possible. I can only be confused," the policeman said as he approached the sound. To his shock and disappointment, he was correct. When he lifted the lid, what he saw inside was something that would stay with him forever. A baby was all bundled up in a worn-out blanket, feeling really chilly and crying out in pain. Marcos was incredibly surprised and couldn't comprehend what he was witnessing. He held the baby in his arms and felt a mix of sadness and anger welling up inside him. Why would someone do something so heartless and leave behind such a tiny and helpless baby? He wondered, scanning the area for the person responsible for abandoning the child. But since there was nobody in the park, the officer quickly called for an ambulance, and the other units took care of the baby until the paramedics and his colleagues showed up. Meanwhile, he hurried back to the car to escape the chilly weather and keep the baby cozy. As soon as he hopped in the car, his mind was consumed by the recent events. Marcos gazed at the tiny baby, cradling the little one in his arms. As an overwhelming and indescribable feeling filled his heart, he felt so much love that tears welled up in his eyes. "Why would someone do this to you, little baby?" asked the man softly, carefully placing the baby on the passenger seat and ensuring that he was snugly wrapped up in his blanket. And that's when he figured out that the baby was actually a little girl. She began to cry due to the cold, and the police officer attempted to soothe her. "Don't worry, you'll be fine," he reassured her, gently covering her. He felt a tightness in his chest, and a mix of emotions filled his heart. "I felt a deep sense of affection and compassion for that fragile and sweet little girl, along with a strong surge of anger and indignation towards the heartless people who left her in the dumpster." He felt repulsed. For a fleeting moment, Marcus gazed at her, observing her tiny face and closed eyes as she drifted off to sleep. In that instant, he couldn't help but imagine what it would be like if that little girl were his own daughter. The police officer gently touched the baby's dirty, yet lovely and pure head, and a feeling of tenderness washed over him. "Wow, it's really stunning," he thought, starting to become accustomed to the sensation. She expressed anger towards him, but he soon realized that he was uncertain about the future of the baby. However, he was aware in that particular moment he had a more significant calling. He made a firm decision to do everything in his power to assist her, fully embracing the responsibility of protecting that vulnerable life. The policeman was very grateful for finding the little girl and being able to be a hero in her life. He came to the realization that rescuing her had given his life a newfound purpose. Marcos made a personal commitment to improve her life and ensure her safety, no matter what. Soon, the ambulance and additional policemen arrived, their sirens blaring. The sound of the sirens caused the little girl to burst into tears. He gently lifted her and stepped out of the car to join the rest. At last, the ambulance arrived and the baby was transported to the hospital. Marcos proceeded with great attention and care, making sure to closely follow the process. In the hospital, the man anxiously awaited the updates of the child's well-being. He had a strong sense of responsibility for her well-being, despite only recently meeting her. Meanwhile, he pondered over the perplexing question of how someone could leave behind such a precious little girl. He recalled the tales he had read about crimes and mysteries, and how he found himself caught up in an actual case. It was a frightening experience, but his determination to seek justice for the young girl was consuming him. As he was deep in thought, a nurse came up to him and shared the news about the baby's condition.
Luckily, the child is okay, but she will require special attention. Once she is feeling better, she will be moved to a foster home. Oh, by the way, what's her name?
Marcos paused for a moment and then replied, "Her name is Flower," causing the nurse to smile. He decided to name her Flower so that he could always call her Little Flower, just like he did in the car when he discovered she was a young girl. However, while he was relieved that she was okay, he couldn't help but feel heartbroken, knowing that the little girl would be given up for adoption. Now that Little Flower was being taken care of, he wanted to learn more about where the baby came from. With the assistance of the additional police officers who arrived shortly thereafter, they requested the records for all the women who had given birth at the hospital. He contacted the other hospitals in the city and requested the identical thing. In that case, they would attempt to determine the child's biological parents. Afterwards, Marcos kept a close eye on the case, despite it not being his responsibility. The police officer was very interested in the investigation and felt a sense of excitement. He made every effort to ensure that Little Flower was getting the care she needed, and he frequently visited her in the maternity ward. He spent time with her and even brought her gifts like toys and clothes. As the temperature dropped, Marcos purchased a pink ensemble complete with a cozy hat that captivated the nurses as they dressed the baby.
"Wow, it's so beautiful,"
they exclaimed, gazing at the heartwarming scene of the policeman cradling the delicate baby girl. Marcos felt a strong bond with the small child. Just by looking at her, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. He experienced a deep sense of affection and devotion towards his daughter, akin to that of a loving father who would go to great lengths for her. The man found himself daydreaming about a future with her, envisioning her first steps and picturing her radiant smile. He sensed a change within himself, gaining a fresh outlook. He briefly considered the idea of adopting her. As he held the baby, the idea became increasingly certain, and he began to feel more content. Unfortunately, the possibility of adopting Flower was shattered when another couple expressed their desire to raise the baby. They were youthful, attractive, and enjoyed a life of ease. However, as they were unable to conceive, they made the choice to adopt the young girl after discovering her circumstances. Marcos felt a mix of emotions when considering the baby's future. He was glad that she would have a chance for a better life, yet he also felt a deep sadness knowing he would never see her again. Time went by, and he kept visiting her at the hospital, knowing she would soon be moving to a new home with a new family. At last, the long-awaited day arrived, leaving Marco with a mix of emotions, a blend of sadness and happiness. Flower was feeling better, and her adoptive parents eagerly awaited her at the hospital. The police investigators, the doctors, and the nurses who attended to the baby, and Marcos, who arrived cradling the little one for the final time. "No need to shed tears, Marcos." The man silently urged himself not to shed tears. Surprisingly, when the policeman gave the baby back to her parents and inquired about her name, they responded with, "We've decided to name her Flower." He experienced a strong sensation in his heart and a deep sense of appreciation that he couldn't put into words. He bid farewell to the baby, tears welling up in his eyes, reassured that she would be well taken care of. After leaving the hospital, he returned to his regular life and work routine. However, he couldn't shake the thoughts and longing he felt for his beloved Flower. Now, he was more determined than ever to locate the individual who left the baby behind and ensure justice is served for Flower. However, much to his frustration, the police department informed him that they had closed the case because the little girl was safe and had been placed in a new family. He felt frustrated, but since his role was limited to investigating illegal drugs and trafficking, he had no choice but to accept their decision. Wow, it's been 23 years already. Officer Marcos, at the age of 62, remained without a family, wife, or children. Devoting his time to his career and, driven by his determination to prevent a reoccurrence of a case like Little Flowers, he steadily advanced his position and eventually became the leader of the investigation team. He was known for his expertise in solving various complex cases, including murders, robberies, trafficking, and organized crimes, which often left people puzzled. His dedication and skill in solving crimes were truly remarkable, leading many to view him as a genuine hero. However, despite his bravery, there was a lingering pain in his heart that never fully healed. It was the memory of a helpless infant left in a dumpster, a child he briefly wished could have been his own. The investigator couldn't shake off the lingering image that haunted their thoughts. They couldn't help but wonder about Flower's well-being and happiness with her adoptive family. He often pondered the potential outcomes and imagined how her life might have unfolded had he chosen to adopt her. Would she be more content? Will she have affection for him in the role of a father? Will there be someone waiting for him when he arrives home? He always pondered those thoughts. The unfortunate man would scarcely fathom the future that awaited him. One day, Marcos was at his office in the police station when they informed him that he had a visitor. "Please enter," he said, his attention divided by a stack of documents. Next, a lovely young lady with dark hair entered and asked,
"Are you Officer Marcos?"
she asked, her face adorned with a shy grin. He was startled and his heart began beating faster. He simply nodded in agreement and the girl expressed,
"I was really looking forward to meeting you, Marcos. My adoptive parents shared with me all the details about you and the incredible things you did for me when you discovered me in the park."
"Hey there, Flower. Is that really you?" "Oh, it's you. I'd never expected to see you again," he shouted, his voice filled with intense emotion.
I couldn't stop thinking about you," she responded.
In that instant, tears welled up in his eyes. He felt completely overwhelmed, and all he wanted was to embrace the lovely girl he cared for deeply, as if she were his own daughter. He had finally achieved his lifelong dream of having a family.